Broke but brilliant Harvard Business School student Memphis Johnson is desperate when he takes a mysterious caddy job for steel tycoon Theodore Sterling III. He quickly discovers that Sterling, who is secretly dying of stage 4 pancreatic cancer, is less interested in golf and more interested in hiring Memphis as a covert corporate consultant. Accidental Caddie, a Harvard genius, a dying tycoon, and the corporate love story that saved an empire. Chapter 1, in which our hero discovers that golf is not actually about golf. Memphis Johnson had exactly 3 problems on that particular Tuesday morning. He was broke, he was brilliant, and he was desperately trying to hide both facts from everyone at Harvard Business School. The broke part wasn't unusual. Orphans rarely came equipped with trust funds, despite what Annie and Oliver Twist had led the general public to believe. The brilliant part was more complicated. At 19, Memphis had already figured out that being the smartest person in the room was far less advantageous than letting everyone else think they were the smartest person in the room. It was a survival mechanism he'd perfected in foster care, refined in community college, and was now weaponizing among the boat-shoe-wearing elite of HBS. Which brought him to his current situation. Standing at the edge of the Oakmont Country Club golf course at 6:30 in the morning, holding a bag of clubs that probably cost more than his entire education, wondering how exactly one caddied. "You the replacement?" barked a man who looked like he'd been carved from a particularly grumpy tree. "That depends," Memphis replied, adjusting his grip on the clubs. "Am I replacing someone competent, or can I just maintain the status quo of mediocrity?" The tree man's face did something complicated. "You're funny. Mr. Sterling hates funny." "Perfect. I also do devastatingly handsome and quietly desperate. Will either of those work better?" "Just don't lose his balls." Memphis blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "His golf balls. Don't lose them. He's particular." The man walked away, leaving Memphis with this ambiguous and vaguely threatening instruction. The thing about being brilliant is that you can usually fake your way through anything if you have about 30 seconds and access to Google. Memphis had neither. What he did have was $47 in his bank account, a rent payment due in 6 days, and a work-study job that had mysteriously restructured him right out of his paycheck. Hence, caddying, at 6:30 in the morning. "You Johnson?" Memphis turned to find a man who could only be described as aggressively elderly. He was perhaps 75, maybe 80, with steel gray hair, ice blue eyes, and the posture of someone who'd never questioned their right to exist in any space they occupied. He wore golf attire that probably cost more than a semester's tuition, and an expression that suggested he was perpetually disappointed by the universe's failure to meet his standards. "Memphis Johnson, yes, sir." Memphis extended his hand. The old man looked at it like Memphis had offered him a dead fish. "You know anything about golf?" "Absolutely nothing, sir." The old man's eyebrows rose. "You're honest. That's either refreshing or stupid." "Can it be both?" "You're funny, too. I hate funny." "So I've been told. I can also do brooding and mysterious if that's more your style." The old man, presumably Mr. Sterling, did something with his face that might have been a smile if smiles could be weaponized. "You're hired. Try to keep up." And thus began the most educational morning of Memphis Johnson's life, and not a single lesson was about golf. Chapter 2, in which rich people problems are still problems. Theodore Sterling III, because of course his name was Theodore Sterling III, was not actually a terrible person, Memphis discovered. He was simply a person who had spent 78 years having his expectations met immediately, and was perpetually baffled by any deviation from this norm. "7 iron, Sterling barked. Memphis looked at the golf bag, which contained approximately 47 clubs that all looked identical. Could you be more specific? Like, is it the seventh one from the left, or the 7 iron, the club with a 7 on it? Ah, the numbering system. Ingenious. Memphis located the club and handed it over. Question: why do you need 40 different sticks to hit one ball? You really don't know anything about golf. I really don't, but I do know that you're favoring your right knee, you've been checking your watch every 6 minutes, and you're about to fire someone as soon as you get off this course. Sterling paused mid-swing. How the hell do you know that? Memphis shrugged. You wince when you pivot right. You keep checking the time like you're calculating how much of it you're wasting. And you have that look people get when they're mentally composing a very satisfying termination speech. The old man lowered his club. You're observant. I'm poor. We have to be. You're also at Harvard Business School. You won't be poor for long. That's the plan. Though the irony of going into debt to learn how to make money isn't lost on me. Sterling actually smiled at that. A real smile. What's your concentration? Finance. With a focus on corporate restructuring. Memphis paused. I want to save companies that are dying. Why? Because I know what it's like to be written off. The words came out before Memphis could stop them. Too honest, too raw. He cleared his throat. Also, it pays well, and as previously mentioned, I'm poor. Sterling hit his ball. It soared in a perfect arc toward the green. Good shot, Memphis offered. Terrible shot. I was aiming 30 yards left. Sterling started walking, and Memphis hurried to follow. You're taking Hutchinson's corporate finance class. It wasn't a question. Memphis nearly dropped the golf bag. How do you... I endowed the building it's taught in. I know everyone who studies in the Sterling Finance Center. Sterling glanced at him. You sit in the back left corner. You never raise your hand, but Hutchinson calls on you anyway, because your written work is exceptional. You solved the Dexcom case study in a way that even the original executives didn't consider. Memphis felt something between flattered and deeply unsettled. That's either impressive research or concerning surveillance. I donate a lot of money to Harvard. They tell me things. Sterling lined up his next shot. I'm also dying. Memphis almost dropped the clubs again. I'm sorry, what? Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Doctors give me 6 months. Sterling said it like he was commenting on the weather. I'm not telling you for sympathy. I'm telling you because I need help, and you need money. And I don't have time for the usual dance of pretending either of those things isn't true. What kind of help? The kind where you're brilliant enough to see problems no one else sees and desperate enough to actually work on them. Sterling hit his ball. Another terrible shot that looked perfect to Memphis. I built Sterling Industries over 50 years. Steel manufacturing mostly, but we've diversified. Problem is, my son was an idiot who died in a skiing accident. My daughter-in-law drinks more than she talks. And my granddaughter... He stopped, something complicated crossing his face. Your granddaughter? Memphis prompted. Is perfect. Which is why I need to make sure she inherits a company worth running, not a sinking ship wrapped in a pretty bow. Sterling turned to face Memphis fully. I'll pay you $10,000 a month to caddy for me twice a week and actually consult on my business problems. Memphis's brain short-circuited somewhere around $10,000. That's either extremely generous or you're extremely desperate, he managed. Both, just like your honesty. Sterling extended his hand. Do we have a deal, Mr.
Johnson? Memphis looked at the hand, at the old man's face, at the golf course that represented a world he'd never quite belonged to. He shook. Chapter 3, in which our hero meets his match, and she's unimpressed. The thing about taking a semi-legal consulting job from a dying steel tycoon is that it makes corporate finance class significantly more interesting. Memphis sat in his usual spot, back left corner, perfect angle to see the board and remain invisible, and tried to focus on Professor Hutchinson's lecture about capital structure optimization. Except now, instead of theoretical exercises, Memphis was mentally applying every concept to Sterling Industries' actual debt-to-equity ratio, which he'd spent the previous evening analyzing. Mr. Johnson. Memphis's head snapped up. Professor Hutchinson stood at the front of the class, her expression suggesting she'd called his name more than once. Sorry, Professor. I asked your opinion on the Berkshire case, specifically whether you'd recommend the proposed restructuring. Memphis glanced at his laptop, where he definitely didn't have the case open because he'd been too busy reviewing Sterling Industries' financial statements. I'd recommend against it. The projected synergies assume a best-case integration scenario, and they're undervaluing the cultural clash between the two organizations. You'll lose at least 30% of the acquired company's top talent within the first year, which destroys the primary value proposition. Hutchinson nodded. Interesting. Miss Sterling, do you agree? Memphis's attention shifted 3 rows up and 4 seats over, where a hand was raised. He'd never noticed her before, which in retrospect seemed like a catastrophic failure of observation. She stood, tall, maybe 5'9", with dark hair pulled into a no-nonsense ponytail and glasses that probably cost more than his laptop. She wore a Harvard Business School hoodie like it was armor, and an expression that suggested she was perpetually 3 steps ahead of everyone in the room. I disagree, she said, her voice clear and confident. The cultural clash is a concern, but it's manageable with proper transition planning. The real issue is the financing structure. They're over-leveraging at a time when interest rates are rising. I'd recommend a more conservative capital structure and a longer integration timeline. She sat down. Memphis was pretty sure he'd stopped breathing. Both excellent points, Hutchinson said. The actual company proceeded with the restructuring as proposed. They filed for bankruptcy within 18 months. The class murmured. Miss Sterling looked vindicated. Memphis looked like he'd been hit with a golf club. After class, he caught up with her in the hallway.
Hey, that was a good analysis in there. She glanced at him with the expression of someone being approached by a persistent insurance salesman. Thanks. Memphis Johnson, he extended his hand. She looked at it for a moment too long. I know who you are. You do? Back left corner. Never speaks unless called on. Solved the Dexcom case in that weird creative way. She adjusted her bag. I'm Alexandria Sterling. Of course she was. Sterling, Memphis repeated, his brain frantically calculating implications. Any relation to Sterling Industries? My grandfather owns it. She said it casually, the way other people might mention having a grandfather who owned a Camry. Why do you ask? Just curious about the steel industry. It's fascinating. Memphis was absolutely not pulling this off. All that steel, being industry-like. Alexandria's expression suggested she was reconsidering her assessment of his intelligence. Right, well, I have another class. Wait, Memphis said, because apparently his mouth had declared independence from his brain. Would you want to get coffee sometime? Compare notes on corporate restructuring? She studied him for a long moment. Are you asking me out, or do you actually want to talk about corporate restructuring? Can it be both? No, but she was almost smiling. I don't date classmates. It's a policy. That's a good policy. Very professional. Memphis should stop talking. Memphis was not stopping talking. What about former caddies turned semi-legal business consultants? Her almost smile disappeared. What did you just say? Oh no. Nothing. I said nothing. That was a stroke. I'm having a stroke. Memphis backed away. Medical emergency. Goodbye forever. He turned and walked very quickly toward the exit, feeling her stare burning into his back the entire way. Chapter 4, in which secrets are terrible at staying secret. Memphis's phone rang at 11 p.m., which was never a good sign. You met Alexandria? Theodore Sterling sounded amused. You could have mentioned your granddaughter was in my class. You could have mentioned you were planning to ask her out? Memphis fell onto his dorm bed. How do you already know that? She called me? She was intrigued. Sterling chuckled. Also suspicious. Also convinced you're some kind of corporate spy I planted to gather intelligence. Are you saying I should be flattered or concerned? Both. She's brilliant, that girl. Smarter than I was at her age. Problem is, she's so busy being brilliant, she forgets to be human. Memphis thought about her expression in class, all sharp edges and careful distance. She seems pretty human to me. That's because you're seeing her, not her resume. Sterling paused. She doesn't know about my diagnosis, or about hiring you. I need to keep it that way for now. So I'm supposed to just pretend I don't know her? That's not suspicious at all. I'm saying don't tell her you work for me. Everything else is fair game. Another pause. She needs someone who isn't impressed by her last name. You need someone who challenges you to be better than your circumstances. Seems like a fair trade. You're matchmaking. A dying steel tycoon is matchmaking me with his granddaughter? I'm maximizing resource allocation, Sterling corrected. It's very business appropriate. It's insane. So is hiring a 19-year-old orphan to consult on a multi-billion-dollar company. Yet here we are. Sterling's voice softened slightly. Take her to dinner, Johnson. Use the company card. Tell her you want a scholarship or something. Just give her a chance to be Alexandria instead of Alexandria Sterling. Memphis stared at his ceiling. This is a terrible idea. All the best ideas are. After Sterling hung up, Memphis lay in the dark, thinking about dark-haired girls with sharp minds and the increasingly complicated web he was weaving. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Alexandria. I got your number from the class directory. Reconsidering the coffee. Tomorrow, 3 p.m., Tate. Come prepared to actually discuss corporate restructuring or don't come at all. Memphis smiled at his phone like an idiot. He was absolutely going to come prepared to discuss corporate restructuring. Chapter 5, in which coffee is never just coffee. Memphis arrived at Tate Bakery 15 minutes early, clutching a leather portfolio he'd borrowed from the library and wearing his only blazer that didn't have elbow patches. He'd spent 3 hours the previous night reviewing Alexandria's published papers. Yes, she had published papers. Yes, she was overachieving even by Harvard standards, and preparing talking points. He was ready. He was confident. He was absolutely going to mess this up. Alexandria arrived exactly on time, because of course she did, wearing jeans and a cable-knit sweater that made her look like an off-duty CEO, which she probably would be someday. You came prepared, she nodded at his portfolio as she sat down. I came terrified, but I'm disguising it as preparation. The corner of her mouth twitched. Honesty, interesting strategy. It's all I've got. Memphis slid a document across the table. I read your paper on post-merger integration failures. The analysis of the Sprint Nextel disaster was brilliant. Alexandria picked up the paper, scanning his notes in the margins. Her expression shifted, surprise, then something that might have been respect. You actually read it? Most people just skim the abstract. Most people didn't spend 2 years in the foster system learning that survival means paying attention to details everyone else ignores. She looked up sharply. You were in foster care? From 14 to 18. Parents died in a car accident. No other relatives willing to take me. Memphis kept his voice casual, the way he always did when discussing this. Ended up with the Hendersons, who were lovely people who already had 4 kids and probably shouldn't have taken in a 5th, but did anyway because Mrs. Henderson believed in divine intervention and Mr. Henderson believed in state stipend checks. That's tragic? Difficult? Character building? Memphis smiled. All of the above. But it's also why I'm sitting at Harvard at 19 instead of somewhere that costs less than a small country's GDP. Alexandria was quiet for a moment. I read about you too, after yesterday. You're kind of famous in certain academic circles. Famous is strong. Notorious might be more accurate. You published a paper at 17 debunking traditional portfolio theory. The entire economics department at MIT had a collective aneurysm. Memphis winced. In my defense, I didn't mean to debunk anything. I just showed my work. You proved that modern portfolio theory makes assumptions that don't hold in actual market conditions. That's not showing your work. That's starting an academic brawl. She leaned forward. How does someone in foster care end up writing papers that make MIT professors cry? Library card, internet access, spite. Memphis counted on his fingers. Mostly spite. I was tired of people assuming I was stupid because I was poor. So you decided to be brilliant instead. I decided to prove I was always brilliant, actually. Poverty just made people blind to it. Alexandria studied him with those sharp eyes. You're different than I expected. What did you expect?
Someone trying to leverage our interaction into networking opportunities. Maybe angle for an introduction to my grandfather. She sipped her coffee. You're the first person in 3 years who hasn't asked about Sterling Industries within the first 10 minutes of conversation. Memphis very carefully did not react to this. Maybe I'm just really good at playing the long game. Are you? No, I'm terrible at games. I'm just genuinely more interested in your paper than your family tree. That almost smile again. Okay, you've earned a second date. This was a date? It is now. She stood, gathering her things. Friday, 7 p.m. Wear something nicer than that blazer, which I'm pretty sure is from 1987. It's from 2003, thank you very much. Even worse. But she was definitely smiling now. See you in class, Memphis Johnson. She left, and Memphis sat there, wondering how exactly he'd gotten himself into a situation where he was dating his secret employer's granddaughter, who definitely couldn't know about the secret employer situation. His phone buzzed. Sterling, how did it go? Memphis, I'm either the luckiest person alive or the most doomed. Possibly both. Sterling, welcome to the Sterling family orbit. It's always both. Chapter 6, in which complications complicate. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in compartmentalization. Tuesdays and Thursdays, Memphis was the Caddie/consultant, walking golf courses with Theodore Sterling, discussing debt restructuring and supply chain optimization, while fetching 7-irons and making sardonic observations about rich people's hobbies. The rest of the week, he was Memphis Johnson, HBS student who was definitely, maybe, actually dating Alexandria Sterling, the most intimidatingly brilliant person he'd ever met, who also happened to laugh at his jokes and touch his hand when she was making a point and generally make him forget how to form coherent sentences. You're distracted, Sterling observed during their Thursday morning session. She's getting to you. I'm not distracted. I'm thinking. About my granddaughter. About your Q3 earnings projections, actually. Memphis handed him a putter. The Asian markets are softer than your CFO is projecting. You need to hedge more aggressively. Sterling lined up his putt. You're good at this. The business consulting, I mean. You see patterns other people miss. It's just math. It's intuition disguised as math. There's a difference. The old man sank his putt. Alexandria has the same gift. You two are going to either build an empire together or destroy each other. I'm curious which. That's a horrifying thing to say about your granddaughter's dating life. I'm dying. I've lost the privilege of being appropriate. Sterling retrieved his ball. How's she doing? Really? Memphis hesitated. In 3 weeks, he'd learned that Alexandria worked too hard, slept too little, and carried the weight of family expectations like Atlas, with a business degree. She never talked about her parents, the idiotic dead father and the drunk mother Sterling had mentioned, and she got a particular expression when anyone mentioned legacy or succession planning. She's lonely, Memphis said finally. She's surrounded by people and completely lonely. Sterling nodded slowly. Her father was supposed to take over the company. When he died, everything fell to her. She was 16. That's a lot of weight for a kid. She's never been a kid. Not really. Sterling's expression was distant. I tried to shield her, but she wouldn't let me. Insisted on learning everything, preparing for everything. By 18, she could have run the company better than half my board. Does she want to run it? That's the question, isn't it? Sterling looked at Memphis. What does she tell you? Nothing about Sterling Industries. We talk about classes, case studies, economic theory. She won't even mention your name. Memphis paused. I think she's trying to be someone other than the Steel Princess. Sterling smiled at that. Steel Princess. She'd hate that nickname. Which is exactly why I'm never using it to her face. Smart boy. Sterling started walking toward the next hole. You care about her. Actually care, not just as some networking opportunity. It wasn't a question, but Memphis answered anyway. Yes, good, because what I'm about to tell you is going to be complicated, and I need to know you'll put her first. Sterling stopped walking. I'm announcing my retirement in 6 weeks. The board wants to bring in an outside CEO. I want Alexandria to take over. Memphis's brain stuttered. She's 23 and still in business school.
She's brilliant, she knows the company better than anyone, and she's family. The board is skeptical. They think she's too young, too inexperienced. Sterling's jaw tightened. They're wrong, but I need to prove it, which is where you come in. I'm not following. I'm going to propose a challenge to the board. Give Alexandria 6 months as interim CEO. If she can successfully navigate the Hutchinson Steel acquisition, that's a smaller competitor we've been circling. Then she gets the job permanently. Memphis's mind raced. The Hutchinson acquisition is a nightmare. Supply chain overlaps, pension obligations, union negotiations. Exactly. It's a test that would challenge a veteran CEO. Sterling's eyes were hard. Which is why she'll need help. Your help. You want me to secretly consult for her while she's secretly competing for your job? Yes. While dating her? Also yes. And she can't know about any of this? Not until after she succeeds. Sterling gripped Memphis's shoulder. I know it's complicated, but I'm dying, Johnson, and I need to know my company and my granddaughter will be okay. You're the only person brilliant enough and crazy enough to make this work. Memphis looked at the old man, seeing the desperation beneath the steel. And if she finds out, if she realizes I've been lying to her for months, then you'd better hope she loves you enough to forgive you. Sterling's grip tightened. This is the deal, kid. Take it or walk away. But if you walk away from all of it. The consulting, the money, and Alexandria. Memphis thought about dark hair and sharp eyes, and the way Alexandria smiled when she thought no one was watching. He thought about being 19 and broke and brilliant and so tired of being invisible. He thought about how spectacularly this could explode. Okay, he said. I'm in. Sterling smiled, but it was sad. God help you both. Chapter 7. In which everything is fine. Narrator, everything was not fine. The announcement came on a Thursday. Theodore Sterling III, founder and CEO of Sterling Industries, was stepping down due to health concerns. The board had appointed his granddaughter, Alexandria Sterling, as interim CEO, pending evaluation. If she successfully navigated the proposed Hutchinson Steel acquisition, the position would become permanent. The business world lost its collective mind. Memphis watched it unfold from his dorm room, laptop open to a dozen news sites, all featuring the same photo. Alexandria in a power suit, standing in front of the Sterling Industries logo, looking like she was carved from the same steel her grandfather had built an empire on. His phone rang. Did you know? Alexandria's voice was tight. About what? Memphis was a terrible liar. Just don't. A long breath. He announced it without telling me. I found out from the board meeting invitation. That's strategic, classic grandfather manipulation. But she sounded more tired than upset. He's dying, Memphis. What? Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. 6 months, maybe less. Her voice cracked slightly. He told the board this morning. He told everyone but me. Memphis closed his eyes, hating the lie, hating himself. I'm so sorry. I have to do this, the acquisition. If I fail, the board brings in some outsider and my grandfather's legacy becomes just another corporate asset strip. If I succeed, she trailed off. I don't know. I become the thing everyone always expected me to be? Or you become the thing you choose to be, Memphis said quietly. There's a difference. Is there? Sometimes I can't tell anymore. Alexandria, can you come over? I know it's late, but I don't want to be alone right now. Memphis grabbed his coat. I'm already on my way. He found her in her apartment, a modest place by Sterling standards, which meant it was merely very expensive instead of obscenely expensive, surrounded by documents. She'd changed out of the power suit into sweats and a Harvard hoodie, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked younger like this, vulnerable. Okay, she said as he walked in, tell me the truth. On a scale of challenging to career suicide, how bad is this acquisition? Memphis sat across from her, looking at the preliminary documents. He'd already analyzed all of this for Sterling, had a full strategy mapped out. Now he had to pretend to see it fresh. It's complicated, he said carefully. The financials look good on paper, but there are integration risks. cultural clashes, pension obligations, union considerations. So, career suicide. Or career defining, depends on the execution. Alexandria laughed without humor. You sound like a consultant. I sound like someone who thinks you're brilliant enough to pull this off. She looked at him then, really looked at him. Why are you here, Memphis? You invited me. No, I mean, why are you in my life? You're 19, you're brilliant, you could be networking with people who could actually help your career. Instead, you're sitting on my floor at midnight helping me analyze a deal that has nothing to do with you. Memphis's throat tightened. Maybe I'm exactly where I want to be. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. Something shifted in her expression. She moved closer, close enough that he could count the flecks of gold in her eyes. I don't trust easily, Memphis Johnson. I can't afford to. But I'm choosing to trust you. Don't make me regret it. I won't, he said, and meant it, and hated himself for the lie embedded in that truth. She kissed him then, soft and tentative, and nothing like the sharp-edged Alexandria Sterling the world knew. He kissed her back, gentle, careful, like she was something precious that might shatter. They spent the night on her floor, surrounded by financial documents and half-drunk coffee, building a strategy for an acquisition that would define her future. Memphis gave her 90% of the strategy he'd developed for Sterling, holding back just enough that it seemed like they were discovering it together. It was the most romantic night of his life. It was built on a foundation of lies. At 3 a.m., Alexandria fell asleep with her head on his shoulder, trust written in every relaxed line of her body. Memphis stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering when exactly he'd become the villain in his own story. Chapter 8, in which the truth hurts, but lies hurt more. 3 months into the Hutchinson acquisition, Memphis Johnson had perfected the art of living multiple lives simultaneously. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, HBS student Memphis, attending classes, contributing just enough to seem engaged without drawing attention, sitting 3 rows behind Alexandria and pretending his heart didn't flip every time she raised her hand. Tuesday, Thursday, consultant Memphis, meeting with Sterling, who was looking frailer each week, the 6-month prognosis shrinking toward reality, analyzing acquisition details, preparing strategies that he'd later discover with Alexandria. Every evening, boyfriend Memphis, helping Alexandria navigate board politics and union negotiations and the 1,000 impossible decisions required to merge 2 steel companies, watching her transform from brilliant student to formidable executive, falling more in love with her with each passing day and hating himself proportionately. You're distracted, Alexandria said one evening, looking up from the merger agreement they were reviewing. They were in her apartment. They were always in her apartment now, Memphis's dorm room having been implicitly deemed inadequate for their purposes. Just thinking. About? About how I'm lying to you. About how your grandfather is dying faster than anyone expected. About how remarkable you are, he said instead, which was also true. She smiled, but it was tired. I'm exhausted, is what I am. The board is fighting me on the pension restructuring. Union leadership thinks I'm too young to negotiate with. And my grandfather, her voice caught, he's getting worse. Hospice starts next week. Memphis moved to sit beside her, pulling her against his chest. I'm sorry. He's still trying to work. Can you believe that? Dying, and he's on calls with the board, with suppliers, with... She stopped. He keeps asking about you, actually. Memphis's heart stopped. Me? Wants to meet you. The boy who's capturing Alexandria's attention must be something special. She mimicked her grandfather's gruff voice. I keep deflecting. Is that terrible? Why are you deflecting? She was quiet for a long moment. Because you're mine. The one part of my life that isn't about Sterling Industries, or family legacy, or living up to impossible expectations. If he meets you, you become part of that world, and I'm not ready to share you yet.
Memphis held her tighter, drowning in guilt. I understand. Do you? She pulled back to look at him. Sometimes I worry you don't really get what you've signed up for. When this acquisition closes, if it closes, everything changes. I'll be CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company at 23. The media scrutiny, the time demands, the pressure, it's going to be insane. And you think I'll bail? I think you're 19 and brilliant and deserve a life that isn't secondary to my corporate obligations. Memphis cupped her face. Alexandria Sterling, I'm exactly where I want to be. You keep saying that, because it keeps being true. She kissed him, deep and desperate, and he kissed back, trying to pour truth into affection, trying to make up for lies with love. Later, as she slept beside him, Memphis's phone buzzed. Sterling, need to see you. Tomorrow morning, urgent. Memphis slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her, and stepped onto the balcony. He called Sterling. This better be life or death, Memphis whispered. It's both. Sterling's voice was weak, raspier than Memphis had ever heard it. The board is moving up the final evaluation. 2 weeks instead of 4. Someone's getting nervous about Alexandria's success. She's doing great. The union negotiations are nearly wrapped. The pension restructuring is solid. There's a leak. Someone on the board is feeding information to Hutchinson's executive team. They're going to try to back out of the deal, trigger the breakup fee clause. Memphis's mind raced. The breakup fee would destroy the acquisition, make Alexandria look incompetent. Exactly. I need you to find the leak. Discreetly. I'm a student, not a corporate spy. You're brilliant and motivated and the only person I trust completely. Sterling coughed, a terrible rattling sound. I'm out of time, Johnson. The doctors are saying weeks now, not months. I need to know she's going to be okay. I need to know the company will be okay. Please. Memphis looked through the glass door at Alexandria, sleeping peacefully, trusting him completely. Okay, he said. I'll find your leak. Thank you. A pause. And Memphis, when this is over, tell her the truth. All of it. She'll be furious, but she'll understand eventually. Sterlings always do. And if she doesn't? Sterling was quiet for a long moment. Then you'll have saved the company and lost the girl, and you'll have to decide which one you can live without. He hung up. Memphis stood on the balcony, looking out at Cambridge lights, wondering when exactly his life had become a Greek tragedy. Chapter 9, in which everything unravels, as it always does. Memphis found the leak in 48 hours. Robert Hutchins, board member, Alexandria's father's old friend, Sterling Industries veteran of 20 years. He'd been feeding information to Hutchinson Steel executives, trying to sabotage the acquisition so the board would vote to bring in an outside CEO, specifically his son-in-law. Memphis compiled the evidence, emails, phone records, financial transactions, and handed it all to Sterling. Good work, the old man said. He looked terrible, gray-skinned and hollow-eyed, death hovering visibly in the corners. They were in his study, not on a golf course. Sterling could barely walk now. I'll handle Hutchins. You focus on helping Alexandria close this deal. She can close it herself. She doesn't need my help. She does and she doesn't, and that's not the point. Sterling fixed Memphis with those steel blue eyes. You love her. It wasn't a question. Memphis answered anyway. Yes. Then protect her. From the board, from the vultures he'll circle when I'm gone, from herself when she tries to carry everything alone. He coughed, painful and wet. And then tell her the truth, because she deserves better than lies from people who love her. She'll hate me. Probably. For a while. Sterling smiled slightly. But Sterlings don't stay upset at people who prove they're indispensable. Trust me, I've been proving it for 78 years. Memphis left Sterling's mansion and went directly to Alexandria's apartment. She was hosting a strategy session with her transition team, 4 executives who'd been helping her navigate the acquisition. Memphis recognized 2 of them from Sterling's description, loyal.
The other 2, unknown quantities. Memphis. Alexandria looked surprised but pleased. We're just finishing up. Give me 10 minutes. Actually, I need to talk to you. Now.
Privately. Something in his voice made her expression shift. She excused herself, leading him to her bedroom. What's wrong? Memphis's carefully constructed walls crumbled. There's a leak on your team. Someone's feeding information to Hutchinson's executives, trying to sabotage the deal. Her face went cold. How do you know this? I investigated, compiled evidence. You investigated my team without telling me? Her voice was dangerously quiet. How exactly does a 19-year-old business student investigate corporate espionage? And there it was, the moment, the cliff edge. Memphis could lie, could deflect, could buy himself more time. Or he could jump. Your grandfather hired me, he said, 3 months ago, to consult on the acquisition, to help you succeed without you knowing. Alexandria stared at him. What? He paid me to Caddie, to give him advice, to develop strategy for the acquisition. Then he asked me to help you, secretly. I said yes. You said... She stepped back. Our first date, when we got coffee, you were already working for him? Yes. Every conversation we've had about the acquisition, every strategy session, you were feeding me information you'd already developed. Yes. Get out. Alexandria, get out, her voice cracked. You lied to me for months. You let me think I was doing this myself, that I was proving myself, when really I was just, what, your puppet? His? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Memphis? Explain to me how lying to my face for 3 months was somehow in my best interest. He was dying. He needed to know you'd be okay. The company would be okay. So he hired my boyfriend to spy on me? To help you. I didn't want help. I wanted to do this myself. I wanted to prove. She stopped, her face crumpling, before she forced it back to steel. Did you even want to date me? Or was that part of the job? No. God, no. Memphis moved toward her. She moved back. You were never part of the job. You were. You are. Don't. Just don't. She wrapped her arms around herself. Was any of it real? Anything you said? Anything we did? All of it. Every moment. I love you, Alexandria. She laughed, broken and bitter. You don't even know me. You know the person you and my grandfather built, the successful CEO puppet you manipulated into existence. That's not true. You did all of this. I just lied. The word you're looking for is lied. She moved to the door, opened it. Her transition team was still in the living room, pretending not to listen. Leave, now. Don't call me, don't text me, don't come to class. We're done. Alexandria, please. Leave. He left. He walked out into the Cambridge night, into the cold November air, and he didn't look back because he couldn't bear to see her face. Behind him, through the door, he heard her start to cry. It was the worst sound he'd ever heard. Chapter 10, in which endings become beginnings. Theodore Sterling III died on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after Memphis's world imploded. Memphis found out from a text from Sterling's assistant. Mr. Sterling passed peacefully at 6 a.m. He asked me to give you this. The attachment was a video. Memphis clicked it with shaking hands. Sterling appeared, recorded recently. The deterioration was shocking, but his eyes were still sharp. Johnson, if you're watching this, I'm dead, which means I don't have to worry about being appropriate anymore. A weak smile. Thank you for everything you did. For the company, but mostly for Alexandria. You helped her become the CEO I always knew she could be. She hates me, Memphis said to the screen. As if hearing him, Sterling continued. She's upset now. She thinks you betrayed her. Eventually, she'll understand you saved her, gave her the tools and confidence to succeed, but that might take time. He leaned forward slightly. Don't give up on her. Sterlings are stubborn, but we're also pragmatic. When she calms down, she'll see the truth. And if she doesn't, he shrugged, then at least you'll know you did everything you could. The video ended. Memphis sat in his dorm room, staring at the blank screen, and decided that Theodore Sterling III had been completely wrong about exactly one thing. Memphis wasn't going to wait for Alexandria to forgive him. He was going to prove he was worthy of forgiveness. The funeral was massive. Business titans, politicians, philanthropists. Anyone who'd ever crossed paths with Theodore Sterling III seemed to be there. Memphis stood in the back, watching Alexandria deliver a eulogy that was equal parts loving and furious. My grandfather was brilliant and manipulative, and absolutely convinced he knew what was best for everyone, she said, which was usually infuriating. The crowd laughed softly. He taught me that steel can be both strong and flexible, that the best leaders are the ones who empower others, even when it means giving up control. She looked directly at the casket. He also taught me that sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who love us best. I'm still deciding if I believe that. Her eyes found Memphis in the back, held for just a moment, then moved on. After the service, Memphis approached her carefully. She was surrounded by board members and executives, but when she saw him, she excused herself. You shouldn't be here, she said. I know. I came anyway. Very on brand, but her voice was tired, not upset.
He left me letters about you, about what he asked you to do. Memphis waited. I'm still furious with both of you, she continued, but I also... She looked away. The acquisition closed. The board voted to make me permanent CEO. I start officially next week. You earned it, every part of it. Did I? Or did you and my grandfather manipulate circumstances to... You earned it, Memphis repeated firmly. I gave you information. You made it brilliant. There's a difference. Alexandria was quiet for a long moment. I don't know if I can forgive you. I know. But I don't know if I want to lose you either. Memphis's heart stuttered. What are you saying? I'm saying, give me time. Real time, not manipulated time orchestrated by my meddling grandfather. Time to figure out who I am as CEO, as myself, without anyone trying to help or fix or save me. She finally looked at him. Can you do that? Yes. Even if it takes months, a year? Yes. Why? Memphis smiled slightly. Because I'm exactly where I want to be. Even when where I want to be is somewhere you're not ready for me to be. She almost smiled at that. You're ridiculous. I'm in love with you. I know. She touched his hand briefly. That's the only reason I'm not completely writing you off. She walked away then, back to the board members and executives, and the life she'd earned through brilliance and determination, and yes, a little manipulation from people who loved her. Memphis watched her go, feeling something like hope. Epilogue, in which time is a flat circle, but also moves forward. 18 months later, Memphis Johnson sat in a coffee shop in downtown Boston, working on his thesis about corporate succession planning in family businesses. He was 21 now, graduating early from HBS, with approximately 17 job offers from firms that definitely weren't hiring him for his last name. Is this seat taken? He looked up. Alexandria Sterling stood there, looking older, not in years, but in confidence, CEO confidence. She wore a power suit and an expression that suggested she'd just demolished a board meeting. It's been 18 months, Memphis observed. I needed time. I gave you time. You did. She sat down across from him. I also needed to prove I could do this without you. Run the company, make decisions, succeed or fail on my own merits. And I'm brilliant, actually. Turns out my grandfather was right about that. She smiled slightly. But I'm also lonely. Turns out he was right about that, too. Memphis's heart started doing complicated things. Alexandria, I'm not promising happily ever after.
I'm still upset about the lying. I'll probably bring it up in every argument we have for the next decade. She reached across the table, taking his hand.
But I'm also ready to figure out who we are when we're not being manipulated by dying steel tycoons. For the record, there was only the one dying steel tycoon. I don't make a habit of this. She laughed, real and full. God, I missed your stupid jokes. I missed your face when I make them. That expression like you're deciding whether to kiss me or murder me. It's usually both. She leaned forward. Coffee, Friday, 7 p.m. Come prepared to actually discuss who Memphis Johnson and Alexandria Sterling are when they're not pretending to be anything other than two brilliant people who are terrible at relationships but willing to try anyway. That's a lot of qualifiers. I'm a CEO. I'm thorough. Memphis smiled, feeling something that might have been happiness. It's a date. It is now. She laughed, and Memphis sat there, watching her walk away again, but this time knowing she'd come back. His phone buzzed, an email from Sterling's estate lawyers. The subject line, Final Distribution of Assets, Memphis Johnson. Curious, he opened it. Mr. Sterling left you a gift. His golf clubs, with a note. For the worst caddy I ever had, who turned out to be exactly what I needed. Take care of my granddaughter, Johnson, and for God's sake, learn to golf properly. Memphis laughed until he cried there in the coffee shop, mourning and celebrating simultaneously. Theodore Sterling III had been manipulative and meddling and absolutely convinced he knew what was best for everyone. He'd been mostly right about that, which was infuriating. The end.
I love making these videos for you. If you liked this story, then please like, subscribe to my channel, and switch on the notifications for more entertaining stories. Please also leave a comment for any story suggestions.